Hey guys, Mass Mechanics here and welcome back to the channel. Here is our C3 Corvette that we've been working on for quite a while now. We got quite a bit of content out there on our LS swap. And well, our Turbo 400 has had some problems. So let's go over what's going on. I'll show you where we're going to go from here and moving forward so we can get this thing finally wrapped up and start having some fun. Unfortunately, I went through my old notes because I used to rebuild transmissions off and on. I went to school for it originally, and our intermediate sprag inside the tranny is broken. And honestly, you got to tear the whole tranny down to get to it, and when you do that, you should rebuild it because the transmission's what, 40 some odd years old, 46 I think years old. So that's how old the clutch material is and all that good stuff. So honestly, it's just a hassle, and it's still a 3-speed. And honestly, I would rather have something a little more updated, just like we updated our 6-liter to fuel injection. You know, the whole car is coming to the new millennium, you know. So let's try to keep that going. And with that, we got this guy. And yeah, she's bleeding out a little bit, but this is a 4L80E. This is out of an 03 van. I think it's a 3500 van. So as you can see, the fluid's pretty nasty. We got this transmission for next to nothing off a good friend. It was actually working, but looking at the fluid, it's pretty nasty. So I would say that this is a candidate for rebuild. So we have to decide if we're going to rebuild it or if we're going to just see if we can get one that runs already and pop it in. But either way, with flirting with 480, 500 foot-pounds of torque, these factory transmissions here are only rated for about 440 foot-pounds, which I say only, but that's really good out of a stock one. But compared to like a Turbo 350, 700, 200, 4R, you know, all that stuff. But still, you can see it's been sitting around for a while. It's pretty old, pretty dirty. It's amazing to think 03 is old now, but it is. One way to tell with these 4L80s is the corrected return line here for your transmission line is moved to the back. That is a key update to find if you're going to ever use one of these transmissions. Having this back here is good because it increases oiling and it prevents a lot of heat in the back of the transmission, unlike the planetary area. They were having any problems with that, so that was one of the upgrades from the earlier models. So that's a big thing to look for when you are trying to source one of these junkyard transmissions. Get the later models that have this because it does help quite a bit from what I've heard. But overall, it's not a bad unit. I mean, it's complete. It hasn't been tampered with at all. We got to start tearing into it and see what we have to work with and decide what we're going to do. If I'm going to rebuild it, I would probably have to spend a pretty penny because their parts are pretty expensive compared to like a Turbo 350 or a 400. But having that extra gear is kind of a nice feature. And seeing as how we did our Phytech, you like that? I got a mouse trap. I had a mouse in here and I caught him the other day, but I just have it out just in case. Because we do not want to have this nice interior messed with. But our Phytech unit, which is really cool, I'll show you. This plug comes with it. This is the transmission harness that came with our kit. The wiring is right under here where I put the PCM. So we just plug it in right here, right into that harness under there. Snake it underneath the car, plug it right into the transmission. This is the newer style plug. The earlier plug is not compatible with any EFI unit really, so another reason to get a later model one. But yeah, so the wiring's there, the car's there, the controller for this tranny is in the car already. I mean, it's part of the Phytech unit, so it kind of is silly not to use it, I guess. That's another added expense I don't have to worry about, but building the transmission is probably going to be upwards of $1,000, probably, I would say, to put the good stuff in it. So let's get the pan off and see what we got to work with. All right, we have our 4L80E here. So far, the only thing that I've done with it is I Took this nasty old broken transmission mount off. We can get rid of that. And I got most of the bolts out for the tail shaft here. We gotta get that off. I would use my one of my guns, but it's kind of tight quarters here. I really don't want to move this transmission. I want to move it as least amount of times as possible because the thing's really heavy. It's over 300 pounds, so it makes it not much fun to move. Of course, there we go. Get this in the drain pan. What I have here is just your regular parts store, Walmart type of deal pan, and I punch it a little hole in it here, and I have it kind of tipped off the table. So when you start draining, it just drains right into the drain pan over here. So there's your tail shaft. Looks pretty good. I popped the rear seal out. I showed you guys how to do that in other videos. You just take a screwdriver and work it around and then pop it out. It's really easy. These move nice. You also have a seal here that you have to replace when you rebuild. So you gotta make sure and do that. Some of these guys I think have plugs in here, or at least they have them on the case side, so you gotta be aware of that. So we're gonna take this, we're gonna put all the bolts in it and put it off to the side. See what we got in here for a mess. As you can see, there's a lot of sediment in there. Those are all, looks like clutch material probably, mostly. There's probably some metal mixed in. It's a high mileage unit, and it did run, but it's she's pretty cooked, so definitely needs a rebuild. Now to get our filter off, just gonna twist and wiggle a little bit. There it is. Got this rubber piece here. Make sure you get that out. The bushing. When you get a kit, it usually comes with it. Even when you buy a filter, it usually comes with it. So, not a big deal. So one thing you gotta remember with these things is you gotta pop the valve body off, and there's actually 2 bolts that go through this into the inside of the transmission, like the planetaries and the I don't remember all the exact names they give you. I apologize, but they go in there and they hold the pieces inside. So once you blow this thing apart and you start really tearing into it and you can't get the parts out, it's because there's actually bolts that go from this direction into those parts to hold them in place for structure. So you might get stuck. Now we're going to get on to taking off the front pump seal. Get that out of the way. It's pretty nasty. Since I didn't show you on the rear one, I'll show you the front one. Same procedure. Of course, this one's a lot harder because it's all rusted. Now I'm trying to puncture it so I can really get a bite on it. And there it is. Just break it free a little bit, and then I puncture it right here like this. And then I can give it a good pry and be done. Because you really don't want to try to score any of this housing because it's important. Otherwise you won't have a good seal again. So let's get this harness all unclipped here. 1. 2. Come on. There we go. I haven't been into transmission rebuilding in quite some time, so I might be a little shaky with my speed on this stuff. I used to do it quite a bit more back when I had my certification to actually do it. It's quite a long time ago. So, okay, let's get this switch off here. There we go. And the switch is off. I don't know if you guys can see. That's how it works. All these little piston things are attached to the valve body here. They're like pressure switches, and that's one big switch. Right. Now, when we take these off, I like to start in the middle, kind of work my way out, just to help with warping. Let's just pull the bolts. Make sure they're all... I'm pretty sure most of these are all the same length. I just like to double check that sort of thing when I'm taking them out. I do have all the repair manuals for this sort of thing on this exact model of transmission. If you're ever going to try to tackle something like this, it's just a good thing to have. Makes for a good read, because everyone's a little bit different, so you're better off paying attention to that sort of stuff. Looks like all these guys are the same length, which is great. These two are different. We'll just keep it with the selector for now. Are they different? No, they're the same length too. Cool. We'll pick up our valve body carefully. And there it is. Now, just like the Turbo 400 I had a part that you guys saw that unfortunately failed with that sprag. You can see it has all the same style vanes and stuff. It's different, obviously, but it's almost the same because this is a 4L80E and that's a Turbo 400. Many of the parts interchange between the two, so that's pretty good. Here's a one of the accumulators. See how much grit is in there. There's going to be a lot of cleaning involved in this project. I won't bore you guys too much with it. I'll just show you what I use and how I lay it out, and then I'll take care of it. I'm not really trying to make this a full-on how-to rebuild transmission. This is a quick show and figure it out, and if you have any sort of knowledge on this type of thing, then perfect. Also, what I was telling you about the bolts, there's a bolt right here, and then there's a bolt right here. These two bolts need to come out because they go through into the internal parts of the transmission. So when you're up here pulling this stuff out, these bolts are going to stop you. So you need to get these out. And I've heard that you want to replace them too, because they have upgraded versions of them now, because I guess these are kind of like a one-time use. This one does look like it's almost been out before, and it looks like there's some pieces, some marks on it. So we'll see. So I put together this bench back here. That way I can lay out all the parts and get them off this nasty table with this filthy transmission case. Because I'm going to eventually have to clean it all out and get it set up. So now that I got that set up, I can start taking the pieces off of this tranny and putting them over there. First I got to finish off in this valve body area. And then I can move on pulling the guts out. So let's get on to that. This is the reverse housing. I don't know the exact name, but I know it's for reverse. What a good tool, huh? Thing's great. You know, just a regular ratchet. And it's pretty simple. I'm really not hitting it that hard because I don't want to hurt my hands. Just the tool is a piece of garbage. Very expensive piece of garbage. Pretty soon I'll just get my hammer drill out and probably do a better job. You can see how nasty and dark this fluid is. It's amazing the transmission still worked. I know a lot of guys like to just get a tranny out of a wrecking yard and pop it right in, but I'll tell you, this is kind of what you're going to end up getting. And I mean, look at the amount of clutch material in there. It's pretty bad. So you want to definitely go through these things. There. There's little seals here, it feels like. If not, it's barbs, but it looks like seals. We're going to spend a lot of time cleaning, but for now, I'm just wiping off the extra oil so it doesn't drip off the table and onto the floor. Alright, we got that bolt off with a 12-point socket. Both these two bolts are out, one there, one there. Now, let's get on to the pump bolts. There we go. Fiddling around with these things to get them out, or get them all torn apart once I get a little closer. So I'm definitely going to need to buy a kit for this. Just have to figure out who's wanting to work with us on this build. I'm trying to reach out to a few different companies and see if they would like to be a part of the build. So we shall see. There we go, snap ring number 1. And this snap ring is non-directional. You gotta always check direction on these things. First set of clutches and steels. And honestly, the clutches don't look all that bad, especially on camera. There's definitely some meat left in these still, which is amazing for the amount of grit that you're finding in the tranny. But I'm sure somewhere, you can see there's been some heat into that one, but I'm sure somewhere along this line there's going to be some heat. So let's keep on digging. Okay. When you take apart a drum like this, you always got to look, because the clutches like to smack up against here when they're engaging and disengaging. So this one's in very good shape. You can see a little bit of marring here. Let me see if we can get on the camera. A little bit of marring right here, but nothing severe, which is good. Because sometimes you'll have to even sit here and file down these edges to try to make sure there's no burring. Here's the next drum. Definitely got a little heat there, but there's no visual damage. Like I said, we'll tear these all down once we get a little bit farther into it. What's next here? Oh, this one is the band. I believe this is our forward band. Get the pin out. There's a little pin right here inside the case, and that locks right into this. Band wear is good. This looks so far to be an excellent candidate for rebuild, so that's great. That's what I want to see. And this is also a non-directional. As you see, it's straight cut. These are the clutches that are in the case. Here's this whole pack. Just take a quick look at them. These ones have a little bit more wear to them. These are the thicker ones. Definitely some heat, but nothing crazy. I mean, you're supposed to build up some heat in these things. It's a friction. There's not a bunch of material left. I mean, they're not terrible. It probably would have ran, which is what they said. And then at the back, you have this guy here with the little teeth. Here's your one-way bearing. Always turns clockwise, never counter. If it turns counter, you got some big problems. Again, it doesn't look bad. Even the bushing on the end still looks pretty good. It's not all chewed up. That's a good sign. Bushing on this end looks pretty good as well on the shaft. And out of the way. Oh, this thing has a another snap ring. It's barely on there. Alright guys, well, that's our transmission now. Teardown was maybe 30 minutes. It wasn't bad at all. It went very easy. I was happy. There wasn't enough catastrophic damage maybe to cause any problems. I think it was just a lot of wear from a lot of miles. This is a major fail point in these transmissions of these bushings. Now this bushing actually looks really good. Not bad at all. But we will be replacing all of them. And obviously the seal will replace. This little plug has a hole in it. Sorry, keep moving the camera. This little plug here has a hole. See if I can show it to you. There it is. So some transmissions have no hole, some do. Got to make sure there's one with a hole in it going back in when we replace that seal. There's the seal here, and then we got to do all the bushings throughout. So that's a major thing that takes some time. Just use big sockets and things to drive them in that fit nice. All this stuff is going to be part of the teardown. That'll take a lot more time. But I'm not really tearing into anything until I get my kit in, because I want to take all these drums apart and swap them piece for piece. That way I don't make any mistakes where I'm not paying attention and then screw something up. I don't do this every day. Even if I was trained in it, that was a long time ago. So I just want to be careful. And when I'm going to work on this one, I tear it down, I clean it really good, I replace part for part that I took off, and then move on to this one. And then move on to this one, and then this one, and then this one. You see what I mean? So that's how I'm going to do it. That way I know I have all the parts in the right positions. This is the little bench that I set up, as I remember doing this when I did other transmissions. It's not ideal, but it works pretty well. Everything's laid out in order, so I know where everything goes. So yeah, that's it. I know it's not a super exciting episode when I'm doing burnouts or anything, but unfortunately this is a big part of building cars. You get stuck with stuff, you get put in bad situations, and then these these are test ports that you can use from the pump where you can pressurize things and make sure stuff engages properly. We'll go over that when we build it. And then these little these black parts here, these are your two speed sensors. We'll be using one of those for the Phytech. That way it knows how fast we're going, so it can adjust and shift the transmission properly. And it'll give us a speedometer signal. And then we got to figure out how we're going to adapt our ancient speedometer to work with a new vehicle speed sensor signal. So we'll get into that too. You can see that this is the LS bell housing, which is great for me. It makes it a lot easier. It gives me an extra bolt hole anyways to bolt to the block, so that's a good thing. I appreciate that, because I just hate having, you know, less bolts than I should have into the bell housing. Because this is not on a regular, like, Turbo 400 or 350 for the old. It's not even on a 480E, except for if it's for a LS style or LQ or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that's where we're at. And thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it, all the love you get and support you give us. You can check us out on Instagram. I'm a little bit ahead on Instagram, so if you want to see like what we're up to before we put it out on YouTube, definitely check us out there. We're the Masked Mechanics.